Beautiful like a fresco and fascinating for its idiosyncrasies, Street Fighter III Third Strike is a melting pot of both popular culture and fighting game design. This is the Annotated Third Strike.
Welcome to the world of Street Fighter III. Prepare for battle.
A common criticism that people have with Street Fighter III is that it leans a little too hard towards science fiction and the metaphysical. Rather than being more, quote, grounded like Street Fighter II with its Enter the Dragon style tournament organized by a cackling, corrupt would-be dictator, complaints against the Street Fighter III game stem from Capcom drifting into otherworldly character designs to complement its high-level mechanics. Really, people probably just complain about Necro. Necro is an android, as confirmed by series producer Tomoshi Sanemoto in an interview with the Capcom Fighters Network, but this implies that he was built from scratch, which conflicts with his official backstory that he was a Russian man named Ilya, duped into being transformed into a super soldier by Gil and his Illuminati. The events of New Generation and Second Impact partly revolve around this, with Ibuki's ninja clan sending her to obtain proof of these genetically modified soldiers, known to her as the G-File. We'll find in other videos that this plan didn't stop with Necro, and it's very likely that it didn't start with him either. Necro is a character whose name is of Greek origin meaning death, is a study in contrasts. He certainly looks slightly sinister with his pupil-free eyes, long fingernails, and strange armor, but his behavior in the game in relationship with girlfriend Effie is lighthearted and even uplifting, especially taking into account their happy endings in New Generation, Second Impact, and Third Strike when they make their getaway from the Illuminati. His animations have personality to spare, like when he uses his headbutt neutral throw and has to shake off having his own bell rung, or the operatic win animations he sometimes shares with his diminutive love interest. He's loose, he's fun. Further digging, however, reveals him to be a tragic character. Early design sketches found in the Capcom Fighters Network vault have notes from the design team that indicate that his facial expressions have, quote, sadness mixed with anger, possibly due to a tragic past. But this is just for starters. Necro is certainly a codename bestowed upon him by his captors. This ties into his backstory as something of a slave to the Illuminati, held against his will to be experimented upon. He's in service to Gil, a man that thinks himself like unto a god. To take the illusion an extra step, if the Judeo-Christian god, whom will certainly come up again in this video series, has his angels, Gil had Necro, both his angel of death and the angel that rebels. His appearance certainly has the ghost-like demeanor of death, and this is one of the two more interesting visual designs of his sad story. Knowing what we do of his personality and demeanor, his white skin and red facial affectations can belie any ferocity and call to mind something more jovial or childlike, or even clown-like. This may be significant. Clowns are, after all, made to entertain, and often through ridicule and torment to generate audience reaction. A happy clown will make you laugh, and a sad clown will make you cry. The audience is manipulated through the performance of the clown. Performance, again, is something Necro clearly is capable of with his short bursts of post-match singing. Of the characters in the Street Fighter III series, no one knows more about manipulation better than Necro, an opera-singing clown for the Illuminati's whims. In actual opera, though, no clown knows this better than Kanio. Lied and schemed against by others in his traveling performance group, Kanio was duped into jealousy and even murder before the comedy was over. You may not know his name by heart, but you may know the title of the famous 1892 tragedy he was the main character of. Leoncavallo's Pagliacci, a word that literally translates to clowns from Italian. Those contrasts between manipulation and freedom are also represented in his other key piece of visual design, his long pointed nose. Of course, the Street Fighter cast is no stranger to outlandish physical abnormalities. Blanca, a character that clearly inspired some of Necro's gameplay, was green after all. Plus, Necro, again like another classic member of the franchise roster, can stretch his limbs, so maybe the nose is a fashion choice on his end. But like Pagliacci, this may be inspired by another famous Italian work, Carlo Collodi's 1883 children's novel Pinocchio. In fact, the actual plot of Pinocchio isn't so far removed from Necro's own origin. The metaphor by itself is fairly obvious. Pinocchio is a marionette puppet that longs to become a real boy, just like Necro is a puppet for the Illuminati who longs for his own freedom. In the book, as well as the famous 1940 Disney adaptation, Pinocchio is often hoodwinked into doing bad things, not unlike how Ilya is scammed into becoming a genetically altered human death machine. The Pinocchio of Collodi's original work is certainly more roguish and rude than the more sweet-natured Disney adaptation, which probably better fits Necro, but both the novel and the film show a character born to be manipulated, made to be a fool, and is reborn with a sense of purpose. In both Pinocchio and Necro's case, that purpose is to be free of their bonds and to ultimately do good. Effie, for her part, was created to give Necro more depth. In the CFN interview, Sadamoto says that to tell decent stories with these playable characters, a supporting cast for them was concocted from the beginning. In Sadamoto's own words, the more hooks the better. This probably also explains the crowd of ninja and the backgrounds and various endings for Ibuki. For Necro, we might glean from his second Impact and New Generation background that the large woman and small man are the scientists that altered his body and gave him electrical powers, but even Sadamoto doesn't know who they are when pressed in the interview. What we know about Effie isn't explained in-game, but it's accepted in fan lore that she was also part of the G Project, to whatever degree, and was the one to bust Necro out of prison. Let's briefly circle back to Necro's real name. Ilya is a common Russian and Ukrainian male name, and is the East Slavic derivative of Elijah, an important biblical figure. Elijah is a prophet and miracle worker featured heavily in the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, as well as Jewish and Muslim holy books and traditions. Though known for many things, Elijah was famous for challenging King Ahab's worship of false gods, such as the pagan deity Baal. God performed miracles through him, such as both resurrection and raining down fire from the sky, which is imagery that this game will use verbatim with another character. Conspicuously, Elijah never died in the traditional sense, but ascended into heaven to one day return before the, quote, great and terrible day of the Lord. He's still invoked and revered in Muslim, Judeo, and Christian beliefs to this day. The religious imagery lines up with his stage location, a Russian mosque at 5:15 p.m., though the clock in the background doesn't accurately reflect this time. Mosques are places of worship for Muslims in the Islamic faith. Though born in the Middle East Arabian Peninsula, Islam spread to Russia in the 15th century, but possibly before. Given the architecture, it's possible that this is the Moscow Cathedral Mosque, often viewed as the central mosque in the Russian capital city according to Wikipedia, and was completed in 1904. It was torn down in 2008 and later reconstructed in 2015. Its color motifs, however, more resemble the Kremlin, the large Moscow citadel that is the seat of Russian government. Fittingly, he shares the stage with 12, Necro's successor from the G Project, who was hunting the singing Russian and his lady friend. They're both unique amongst the cast in that their text in the grade and win quote screens are completely colored red. Longtime players of the Street Fighter franchise will immediately catch Necro's similarities to Dalsim, as was already mentioned. Since it is, again, worth noting that Third Strike takes place at the current end of the grander franchise timeline, it's possible that the G Project's mission was to study and copy the world's best fighters, enhancing their test subject with these physical attributes. This concept goes a step further with much of 12's gameplay, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Ultimately, this idea of copying other Street Fighter characters' moves came back around in the future, so while I'm speculating here as to whatever narrative ground the G Project was built on, I don't feel it's too far of a stretch, no pun intended, to apply it to Necro here. But again, Necro is a character of contrasts, and perhaps nothing will finally cement that as much as his gameplay. Certainly his attack buttons will stretch across the screen for long-range combat, but the Street Fighter III games are not built on traditional zoning and distance fighting like most other games in the genre. Or a Dalsim player will wield his elongated limbs in concert with a fireball game and teleporting for deception and misdirection, high-level Necro gameplay is all about constant harassment, up close and in your face. He's a stun-generating monster, and a good command of positioning will allow players using this character to push you into a corner so he can unleash a relatively simple combo that can end a round quickly, along with a little bit of stylish flourish if they get the chance. Again, like Dalsim, Necro has command normals for all of his standing attack buttons that shorten the range of his limbs by pressing back on the stick and the button. The standing hard punch variation will act as a launcher that can be easily followed for quick extra damage, and usually by his other command normal, down back and hard punch, which will always send an opponent flying when it connects. Back and light kick will target combo into standing medium punch. His jumping attacks tend to lean toward more air-to-air usage, so his jumping drills are what he can use to alter the trajectory of his jump for safety, closing in on an opponent to mix them up, or for constant corner pressure. Pressing down on a kick button in the air will perform at the strength of the kick determining the downward angle. Necro has some notable throw capabilities. His forward throw and back grabs do what they should by either tossing the opponent ahead or away from you, but he's one of the few characters in the game that can combo his corner throw. In that position, the headbutt forward throw can be followed up for extra damage if reacted to quickly. Also notable is that his normal throw will change into a German suplex when the opponent's back is turned, though this isn't commonly seen in high-level play. His taunt is fun in that it will boost his attack power for the round, but by holding the attack button down, his tongue will continue to lash, which will slightly damage opponents. Depending on the corner combo, skilled Necro players will often find opportunities to use his taunt tactically in tournament play. Outside of his universal overhead, Necro doesn't have any quote normal command overhead attacks, but he has 2 special overhead attacks that make up for it. The Rising Cobra is executed with a backward fireball motion and a kick button, the strength of which determines startup time and damage. It scoops him backward just enough before rocking him back forward that it can be used to bait and punish throw attempts, with an EX version that hits twice. The second, the Flying Viper, hops him in the air a bit for a downward arm attack using a reverse fireball motion and a punch button, the strength of which determining the jump distance. The EX version will also hit twice. Keeping with the slithering motif, the Snake Fang is a low-reaching command throw that can be blocked and will toss an opponent flying in the opposite direction, but will give an immediate German suplex if an enemy's back is turned. Useful if Necro is carelessly jumped over. The Tornado Hook is where things get nasty. Perform with a half circle forward and a punch button, the strength of the button press will grant different effects, all of them useful. The light punch will knock down, while the medium punch will keep them standing, but is commonly used to combo into his super arts. Both of these can be comboed into from the standing back medium kick, the target combo, or from a light attack button. The hard punch version cannot be comboed into, but will turn an opponent around after the hits connect. This makes it the ideal starter for punishing missed uppercuts. A 5-hit EX version will knock down and causes the most raw damage. These are the bread and butter of Necro's offense, and by themselves cause a considerable amount of stun. When combined with super art the Electric Snake, a full hard punch hook starter combo ending in a super will dizzy members of the cast that have a stun meter on the shorter side, but severely threaten the rest of the cast that aren't seeing stars with Necro's next mix-up opportunity. The Electric Snake travels along the ground and does a high amount of stun on its own, and has a difficult parry timing attached to it, making it a Necro player's best choice depending on the matchup. The first super art, the Magnetic Storm, can also be used in these corner hook combos for high damage, but has a bit more utility as an anti-air attack. As the name suggests, it will pull an opponent close to Necro, and added shocks can be performed by mashing the punch button. This is sort of a high-powered variation on the Electric Blaster special move performed with a Dragon Punch motion and can also be extended by tapping punches. Sadly, his final super art, the Slam Dance, is high in damage but low in practical use. Essentially a command throw, its slow startup time will allow players on the receiving end to jump out of it even after the super flash. At the tournament level, good Necro players are out there, but his unconventional gameplay tends to sit him in the mid-tier category, even though a single touch can turn a match completely in his favor. At the highest level, good Necro users are separated from great ones by how flashy their corner combos become during stun juggles, which also makes him one of the more crowd-pleasing characters to watch on YouTube or even at a live event. It's creativity unshackled.